The brand new Maserati MC20 GT2 Stradale. This is Maserati's new flagship supercar, which I attended its launch in Malaga, Spain. And Mark was fortunate enough not to attend this event because he missed out on nearly 55 hours of round-trip travel to get about maybe 4 fast laps and 8 laps total around the Ascari circuit. This was one of the more interestingly run events I've attended. I also had a very blessed experience of driving nearly an hour and a half in rush hour traffic in this vehicle. So what is this car? Well, it's a GT3 RS, McLaren 750S, Huracan STO competitor. It's taking the MC20, which is more of a GT supercar, and turning it into a more track-focused machine. Now, we've never covered the MC20 in the past, so let me refresh you on what this car is. It's Maserati's flagship product. It's a part of Maserati's restructuring or rebranding as an organization. Despite being a Stellantis brand, Maserati is refreshingly self-aware. If you talk to any of their senior leaders, they will tell you the same thing. The last 5 or 10 years has been a mistake or painful, and it has damaged the brand here in the United States and around the world. In the US, rightfully so, Maserati has gained the reputation of being this buy here, pay here lot, like supercar, luxury car. Rebranded Chryslers without a lot of the specialness of this class of car. With the MC20, the new Gran Turismo, and the Grecale, they are putting genuine effort in the car and trying to shake that reputation. I'll leave it up to you whether or not they've succeeded in that. The MC20 is a carbon-tubbed supercar now. It has a double wishbone front, multi-link rear. It is a mid-engine car. It has the first instance of the Nettuno twin-turbo V6. It's a 90-degree V6, which leads to, let's call it, some of its engine characteristics. It is a dry sump setup. It has a pre-combustion chamber, which leads to more efficient combustion, which means more horsepower and less emissions. It's port and direct injected. It's a dry sump. It puts its power down through the 8-speed Tremec dual clutch, essentially the same gearbox that you find in the car behind me, a C8 Z06. It also even uses an ELSD. Obviously, past that, they're calibrated entirely different and they function differently. The MC20 and the GT2 variant uses a brake-by-wire setup from Continental versus, let's say, Bosch, which is used in the Corvette setup. And smartly, you cannot program brake feel. It is consistent across the modes, trying to make this system feel more natural and more engaging. The GT2 Stradale variant turns the MC20 up. From an exterior perspective, brand new aero, larger air intakes, it looks far more aggressive, less generic, and more special. The car also has incredible color options, and most importantly, doors that open like this. It has billionaire doors, not doors that close like this, doors that open like this. It's a level of specialness visually that this car has over things like the GT3 RS or the new ZR1 or the C8 Z06 and many of its other competitors. This car is about flash. The engine tuning has also been changed along with the suspension calibration. So this car now makes 640-ish horsepower and 530-ish foot-pounds of torque. That's through more boost, through more air that makes its way to the intakes along with better cooling. The car does 0 to 62 or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 2.8 seconds and does the quarter mile in, like, I don't know, the tens. Maserati claims this is one of the fastest rear-wheel drive cars ever made. I raise the C8 ZR1, which costs $100,000 less, as my counterpoint to that. This car does cost a shitload of money. It's between $310,000 to $315,000 before any options. You have an optional performance package, which adds Cup 2R tires, 245 front, 305 rear, carbon ceramic brakes, and obviously some other changes to suspension calibrate, or really software calibration, to the diff and the steering and some other things. You also have optional carbon buckets, which are spectacular. One of the things that Maserati does very well is the specialness of the interior and the exterior and the rareness. This car, they are making a total of 914 globally, with just under 500 making their way to the US. The US is its primary market. The reason for the limited production is the other part of this. Maserati is trying to shed the reputation of horrific depreciation, so by making this car rare, they're trying to keep up residuals and make this car more desirable. So with all that said, let's go talk to Antonio, the chief engineer of this product, who's going to walk you through what this car is and is not from a technical perspective. I'm here with Antonio, the head of model line for MC20, essentially the chief engineer for the GT2 Stradale. What was your goal for the GT2 Stradale? What were your objectives? Is it supposed to be like a track day car, GT3 RS, Lamborghini STO, or those?
Yeah, so the first benchmark is with our self, of course.
Yeah.
We start from MC20.
Right?
MC20. I stay on MC20 project. So GT2 and with GT2 Stradale, during all development, we are working to increase the performance in terms of aerodynamics, thermal management, and driving experience. Also in jet refine in GT Corsa Sport mode, and when you switch on Corsa for track usage, we maximize all performance in terms on engine calibration, gearbox calibration, steering wheel calibration. Thanks to the improvement of the aerodynamics, we are able to reduce the time lap on our circuit reference, that is Misto Alpha in Balocco, of about 5 seconds versus the current MC20. That is, in race words, is a huge
You're
time.
using the same heat exchangers, correct?
Yeah.
So no hardware change,
Correct.
just aerodynamic management.
Yes.
But you've increased the ride frequency by 10 and 8%. And that's largely, you said, to deal with aerodynamic downforce and then the stickier tire you're running, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Same brake-by-wire system, different brakes now. You're running a bigger car, recalibrated ABS.
Correct.
What have you done to steering? Is the steering
Yeah,
calibration?
we introduced 3 different calibration of the steering wheel in GT, Sport and Corsa mode to make the calibration more precise, more direct. As you said before, the development of a total new brake system in carboceramic way, in which we increase the diameter of the front of 8 millimeters, the diameter of the rear of 20 millimeters, and also the thickness. Plus 2 millimeters on the front and plus 8 millimeters on the rear. What's the meaning? The stop distance 100 km/h is 0 is in only 29 meters.
You know, there are lots of cars today that you can buy that do track things. You know, STO, GT3 RS, new ZR1. You have lots of competitors in this space. You're the head of this car. What were your goals to make this stand out in its space? What did you want the driver to feel in a car like this?
This vehicle is, let me say, easy to drive. You don't be a professional driver to create a great time lapse on Ascari is a wonderful circuit. In order to be able to switch on every day useful car to a track day car without to be a pilot, without to have a specific F1 patent. So if you want, these are the customer that for which we developed the GT2 Stradale in this way.
In the Maserati MC20 GT2 Stradale. We're back at the Ascari circuit. I'm going to walk you through how this thing drives, particularly compared to its nearest rivals, the GT3 RS, the Lamborghini STO. Both cars we are very, very familiar with. I'm going to do my best to try to remember where I'm going on the Ascari circuit and not ball up this north of $300,000 car. All right. First things first, this is a carbon-tubbed supercar. One of the few in its class. The GT3 RS is not a carbon-tubbed car. Basically, you have to go to McLaren. And the first thing you notice is the sheer amount of rigidity that's in the actual body structure itself. It's double wishbone in the front, multi-link in the back. It uses the Tremec 8-speed dual clutch and an E-diff. It's double wishbone. It's a car that you have to drive around the front. you combine that with some very, very quick steering that actually, for a modern car, has some level of feel. It is surprisingly confidence-inspiring. You can carry some very, very high speeds in this car. I will say, drivetrain, it's a 90-degree twin-turbo V6. You get a lot of torque, but it's not a particularly soulful feeling engine. In the world of these, its nearest competitors, which are two of the best sounding naturally aspirated cars in the world of, ZR1s with V8s and Z06s with V8s. I will say that's the Achilles heel of this car, is that the emotionality sound-wise is not that high. It is a drivetrain that is dominated by the torque, as you can probably imagine, being forced induction. God damn, is this thing fast. The carbon ceramics, let's talk about that. It has brake-by-wire. It's the Continental setup. Unlike the BMWs, which are running a similar setup to this car, it does not allow you to change the programming of the pedal feel. It's pretty linear. Brake pedal has pretty good travel. It's less on and off than, say, a BMW brake-by-wire setup, or even the Corvettes. The dual clutch, it feels very similar to the GM application. It's very fast upshift. Sometimes gives you a torque shove like it just did then. Basically bump shifts the car. It's pretty non-offensive, but again, it's not as seamless as the PDK in a Porsche, and it's not as emotional as the Lambo STO setup. The car has very, very high levels of grip. The aero you definitely feel in big sweepers. Again, I don't know this car particularly well. This is my 4th lap in it, and the first one at any real kind of pace. But it's, yeah, lots of grip, drive around the front. The traction stability control systems do a good job keeping you out of trouble. I guess in the proficiency hierarchy of the cars it competes with, the STO is more emotional. It may be, I don't know if it's fast around the track as this car is, but it's a more emotional vehicle because of the V10. It's more flawed. The 3RS is mechanical perfection, right? It's, it's a car that does everything, right? You can't fault it for anything. It just maybe doesn't have the torque, the shove that this car has, but you have greater levels of confidence. I don't know, this car sort of sits in between in general, like, emotionality of those vehicles. It may feel a little bit more dramatic than the 3RS because of its torque delivery, but yeah, that's, again, not a lot of time in this car, legitimately 4 laps. So with that, let's head into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the Maserati MC20 GT2 Stradale. First off, huge thanks to our title sponsor Bridgestone, who makes videos like this possible. Matt, our PR rep from Maserati North America, who's genuinely a lovely man. Kevin, our local rep, and of course Antonio, the engineer, who let me ask him about a billion questions. Maserati has developed a very competent, very visually interesting hypercar supercar. What this car does best is largely due to its carbon tub. It feels ultra nimble, being like 3,200-ish pounds wet. It is a light feeling supercar. It has fairly good, not classy EPS. It feels very nimble in the front end, and it's more of a driver's car. And in a world of largely naturally aspirated hypercars in this class that it competes with, like the 3RS or supercars and the Huracan STO, the fact that this has forced induction means there's a lot of torque. That's one of the benefits of this vehicle. It rides very, very well. It's a non-intimidating car to drive. The con of this car is it's competing with some very, very, very special competitors. I do not envy Maserati in the least because they've not made this car super edgy or super hardcore. It sort of falls in this middle zone. A GT3 RS is more competent to drive. It has much better steering, better brake feel, better chassis setup, and it's going to dominate this car around a real racetrack. A Huracan STO puts a bigger smile on your face. That naturally aspirated V10 is hysterical. Well, it may technically probably be slow around a track. If I'm spending probably $400,000 by the time I'm done, I want to have a big smile on my face. And things like the Z06 behind me and the new ZR1 sound better, and I'm probably sure are faster around a racetrack. So that becomes the hard thing for Maserati with this GT2 Stradale. Because they played it safe, it is not that exciting on a racetrack. And it's, to be fair, probably better than all those cars on the street though. So that leads me to the fine print of the MC20 GT2 Stradale. You have to like the way it looks, and it does look very, very good. You have to like the fact that it is ultra exclusive, 914 built, and you have to like the general feeling of a Maserati, and maybe you're tired of all those other cars. That's why you're going to buy it. But it's a hard one for me. So with that, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.